All right. Here we go, y'all. Garr Russell here. And I am going to create an audiobook. My real estate story from lawnmowers to RVs, my entrepreneurial journey filled with faith, failures, and fun times by Garr Russell. All right, dedication. It's the people in our lives who either push us towards or away from who we desire to be. And this book is dedicated to several of those people. So one of my favorite sayings is, life does not happen to us, it happens for us. And the quicker that we grasp this truth, the quicker we can take all the influences in our lives and give them a piece of the credit for the person that we have become. So I want to start by giving some props to my mom. Today, as I sit here and write this book, it's actually the 8th year of her passing. My mom gave me many, many gifts. I wish I would have known the life happens for us statement while she was with us, so I could have shared with her how many of these things she would label as failures in her life as a mother actually made me a better person. My mom loved to sing, laugh, and have a good time. She had grit like no other, and she was not afraid to work and work hard. Speaking of hard workers, I had no shortage of examples of those in my life. My dad is a hardworking man as well. He taught me a lot about hard work and loves his kids well with lots of hugs and kisses. Seriously, side note here, hugs and kisses are needed when growing up. And when a dad does that, it's such a great thing. I'd encourage you, if you are a dad and physical touch isn't a practice in your home, get over it and give your kids the hugs and kisses that they need and deserve, honestly, to develop properly. Next, I thank God for my grandma, Emma, who my oldest kid is named after. She was one of a kind. She loved her family so well. And boy, oh boy, did she pray for us. I have countless memories of her sitting in her prayer room near the fire and working the heck out of her rosary. This book is also dedicated to Skip Taylor, who led me to the Lord in 2003. He was the best man in my wedding, and he and his wife Cindy are the godparents to my kids. And of course, to my best friend and wife, Tina. She supports me and picked up where my grandma Emma left off, covering me in prayer and love. Lastly, I want to dedicate this book to you. Yeah, you. Even though we've never met, we are cut from the same cloth. We are the crazy few who can't imagine simply trading time for a paycheck. We're the crazy few who want control of our calendar, earning, and potential. And honestly, well, we want it all. We get fueled from words like desire, purpose, legacy, impact, generational wealth, and more. Let this book fuel the fire as well for you, my friend. Table of contents. Introduction, Going Wheels Up. Chapter 1, Dad, I need $500. Chapter 2, He Walks, He Talks. Chapter 3, Faith Over Fear. Chapter 4, Anniversary Gift Gone Wrong. Chapter 5, Meet Mr. Kim. Chapter 6, COVID and My Comeback. Chapter 7, Challenges and Failures. Chapter 8, Take a Step. Introduction, Going Wheels Up. I never should have made it this far. Those are basically the words that sum it up. Those words and but for God. Like many others, I have a story full of ups and downs, triumphs and tests, and but for God. But this story would be very different. As I sit down and reflect on my life's journey so far, I'm amazed. I believe the gifts and callings of God were put in us before we were even born. And a lot of the things could describe who I am and who I've been. I've been a full-time RVer. I like to start, scale, and sell businesses, including my real estate adventure. I've been an RV rental franchise. I have an RV rental franchise with more than 20 locations. At the time this book was written, now we have over 35 actually. Along the way through this crazy journey of faith, family, and entrepreneurship, I've experienced fear and failures, alcohol abuse and fallouts, bankruptcy, getting fired and getting hired. And underneath it all runs a theme of radical redemption, the kind that takes losing it all to gain what really matters, a death that brings new life and restoration through understanding the power of Christ crucified and the power of his resurrection. It's been quite an amazing journey so far. As I'm ready to turn 25, I've been reflecting on my life. And I recently read that once you hit 45, you start to step into who you truly are in business and in life. And you gain more focus and clarity around the vision you have for your life. You're not so worried about impressing others as you once were. And you're not worried about keeping up with the Joneses. I could definitely see that myself. I can see the ways I've been challenged, especially since COVID ended. The pandemic definitely had an effect on all of us in many ways. Probably people still trying to sort it out. Some of us lost loved ones. Some of us lost businesses. Others around us found renewed closeness with family. As for me, I discovered widening cracks in the foundation of who I was, and those cracks almost swallowed me and my whole family. But I'm blessed because discovering these cracks put me on a path that changed my life, my relationships, and my business forever. And it wasn't easy, but oh man, was it worth it. The hero's journey. I'm sitting here in my office right now, surrounded by Post-its and notes I've written to myself to help keep my vision in front of me at all times. For example, to the right, there's a check I wrote for $1 million. My goal is to hand this check to a nonprofit by 2025. Then there's another check written out for $5 million. I wrote that one out to myself from one of my companies. Our goal is to scale that company and cash this profit sharing check to ourselves. There's a picture in front of me. I guess it's really more of a drawing or a diagram, but it depicts something called the hero's journey. The hero's journey shows how all entrepreneurs go through ups and downs along the way. This is a concept I learned from one of my coaches, Russell Bronson, and it reminds me that challenges and trials are completely normal. Let me repeat that. Challenges and trials are completely normal. In this book, you're going to hear references from my coaches, people like Russell Bronson, Tony Robbins, Andrew Womack, Josh Latimer, and Myron Golden, who have made a huge impact on my life. Having coaches who are 10 steps ahead of us has absolutely been, who are 10 steps ahead have absolutely been a game changer for me. If you don't have a coach in your life who has achieved what you want to achieve and can provide you guidance and accountability, I highly recommend stopping everything and going to find that one right now, so that when you get stuck on your hero's journey, and you definitely will, that's just entrepreneurship, you don't have to stay stuck. For now, feel free to use me in this book as your guide. I'm blessed and honored to share my COVID comebacks or my comeback story journey with you. And I would love nothing more for you to take the story of my hero's journey and let it inspire you to find your coach, guide, or guru. Why? Because you have people who are looking to you, whether it's your wife, children, friends, family, coworkers, or employees. No matter who you are in life, where you are in life, you have people looking to you for leadership and guidance. Where are you leading them? At the end of your life, what is the end path you will have taken others down? Going wheels up. For me and many others, COVID was an instigator and a turning point for change. I praise God that He showed me the path I was taking my family down during COVID and helped me to get back on track. There's many others out there who are still struggling with the aftermath of COVID. I know many people who lost loved ones, businesses, marriages, and jobs because of COVID. And I think we don't fully realize the depth of the effects COVID has had on this world because of the damage it did to people on an emotional, mental, and economic level. No matter what you've endured during this pandemic, this book will serve as your reminder that it's time to get back up. You have ideas, visions, hopes, and dreams. The gifts and callings of God were given to you from before you were even born. It's time to take those gifts and ideas, muster up your entrepreneurial spirit, and take action. It's time to go wheels up. Just like the title of this book says, it's time to make a plan and start implementing it. Get that idea off the ground already. People need you. Your family needs you. There are people out there who need the jobs your business will create. About this book will serve as your wheels up blueprint to taking action and moving past whatever challenges you might be going through. Inside, I break down 8 core lessons I've learned from COVID and throughout my life. These lessons have been the keys to my survival as a man, husband, a father, and as an entrepreneur. In essence, this book is my COVID comeback story, and I wrote it for you, the Christian entrepreneur or entrepreneur wannabe who wants to do bigger things with their business, their relationships, and their life. Yet you hesitate as you stand on the edge of going all in because honestly, you're afraid to fail. I get it. And but for God, I'd be there too. Still, as you read this book, you're going to learn about the 10-year anniversary gift fail that led to a real estate endeavor that has now become the nation's largest RV rental management franchise opportunity. Being full-time RV nomads for 5 years, how it impacted the future of my business and my relationships with my family. My struggle with alcohol and the personal and spiritual transformation that changed my life. I hope the story will encourage you to walk in that kind of faith, not fear, that causes the transformation in your life personally, professionally, and spiritually. Failure isn't the end. It's just part of the journey. And lessons you learn along the way are irreplaceable. No matter how life's challenges or events like COVID impacted you, you are not alone. Let's take the step forward in faith together. God bless. We'll see y'all inside. Chapter 1. Dad, I need $500. I can picture this scene perfectly. I was in the 5th grade and my parents had just gotten divorced. My dad and I were at my grandparents' house hanging out, and I looked over at him in all seriousness and asked him for $500 so I could get the tools I needed to start my lawn care business. I may have not known what the word entrepreneur was yet at the age of 11, but the idea of having my own business got me really excited, and I was sure he was going to catch the vision too. In my mind, the plan was simple. I used the money, the $500, to buy some lawnmowers, then pay other kids around the neighborhood to do the work while I ran around setting up the bookings. Easy, right? Well, my dad worked for someone else his whole life, and there's nothing wrong with that. He had done a few things here and there, but nothing that could be really considered a business. He was a pretty cautious and careful guy, but from the stories I had heard from my grandma, he had an adventurous side too. Once when he was staying with his parents, he complained about their house rules. They jokingly told him if he didn't like it, that he could go join the carnival. Well, as fate would have it, the carnival was in town, so he did. He jumped on the train and traveled with the carnival. Knowing about his wild streak, I thought this would get him excited about my idea too, except he didn't. In fact, his response crushed me. He laughed and called me lazy. To him, making money was about getting a job and earning a wage. Needless to say, I had inherited the entrepreneurial gene, and he hadn't. Embrace your wiring. Looking back, I recognize that his response stemmed from the different way of looking at things. But if I'm being honest, his response wounded me for many years to come. It triggered insecurity, fear, and doubt that affected me until I finally dealt with it in 2003 when I started walking with the Lord. I don't want anyone else to feel that way. The truth is, there's no wrong way to look at work, just different perspectives. Some people are doers. They're out there pushing the lawnmowers, changing tires, and delivering the packages. Other people's are thinkers. They're the ones coming up with the business ideas and how to implement them. Then you've got communicators, the creatives, the organizers, and the list goes on. Me, I'm an idea guy. It's how God wired me. But until I embraced my wiring, accepted that entrepreneurship as my gift and my calling, I felt like I was kind of an oddball for not seeing the things the way other people did. It's so cool now looking back to know that about myself. because for many years I didn't have that understanding. Well, because you're reading this book right now, I'm guessing you can probably relate. Maybe you've had times in your life where you felt misunderstood, like you must be doing something, like something must have been wrong with you because you didn't want to do things the way most people do. There's nothing wrong with you. God just wired you for something different. That's a good thing. The world needs you just the way you are. Embrace it. Start your own real estate journey. Looking back at my entrepreneurial, that's the moment with my dad where my real estate story began. I saw real estate just because I say real estate just because, like with RVs, my first entrepreneurial idea involved wheels, the wheels of a lawnmower. Even as a kid, I was ready to go wheels up and take action to make my ideas a reality. As you read further in this book, I'll start sharing more of my real estate journey with you, intertwined with my life experiences, thoughts, beliefs, and patterns I've started, stopped, and broken or gained throughout the years. And if you're like me and you see things just a little bit differently than others, you see needs in the marketplace you can fill, and you have a desire to create solutions that make people's lives better, lean into it. When your brain has a light bulb moment, that could actually be a business. That could actually be a product. That could actually be a good service. Go with it. You are an entrepreneur. You have the entrepreneurial spirit inside of you. Open up your mind to the thought as you continue to read my real estate story, as you see things that resonate with you, that get you excited. Pay attention to your thoughts and how excited you feel. And don't let what others say around you say or determine what you're going to say or do. Also, don't be surprised if God brings you back to some memories of entrepreneurial ideas or ventures you thought of or even started at a young age. That means you've got the bug, you've got the gifting, you've got the call. I believe that God is going to use this book to encourage you in your entrepreneurial journey. And it's my goal that it will empower you to embrace how God wired you so you can experience new clarity and confidence as you continue to write your own story. So sit tight. By the time you're done reading, I hope this book has sparked the beginning of something new for you. Chapter 2. He walks, he talks. He walks, he talks, he crawls on his belly like a reptile. Gather around, folks, and take a look. I'll never forget that Saturday morning that my stepdad, Gary's boisterous shout caught the attention of everyone around at the local farmers market. All eyes turned towards Gary as he pointed his finger right at my brother and me. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, but it taught me one of the biggest lessons about sales and marketing that I still use today. The truth is, Gary was one of the greatest salesmen I ever met. That, at least in my mind, he could sell anything, and he really did. When my brother and I were young, we spent our Saturdays at flea markets and farmers markets with Gary, selling really whatever he felt like selling that day. And I do mean whatever. I remember one day he went to the store, bought 20-pound cakes, cut them into fat, even slices, and then sold the slices of the pound cake. On a typical day, within 3 to 4 hours, we'd walk away with $6, $8, even $1,000. So much of what I learned about selling, I attribute to Gary. In this chapter, I'm going to give you the top 5 lessons on sales that I learned from my stepdad, Gary. These sales lessons are simple and yet apply to anyone, no matter what they sell or who they're selling to. Number 1, capture attention. One of the biggest lessons I learned from my stepdad about sales was you can attract people no matter what product or service is if you're good at drawing attention. Gary was phenomenal at gathering a crowd. He would use whatever he had at hand to do it, including my brother and me. I laugh at it today because as a kid, I was so embarrassed. I didn't like having all eyes on me. So when he would point to us with both hands, expecting us to get on the ground and crawl on our bellies like reptiles, I stood there like a rock. My little brother, however, he was a little more hilarious and had no problem getting into the act. I'm not suggesting that you drag your kids out into the farmer's market on a Saturday and make them get down on their bellies in the dirt to get people's attention. But you do have to get over the fear of putting yourself out there. It's okay to be embarrassed and feel awkward talking to people about what you sell. It's actually normal. But you have to keep pushing through and get over yourself. Be part of the entrepreneur, being Part of being an entrepreneur is getting your offers out in front of people whose lives will be changed forever by what you have to sell and turning their attention your way. Whether you're marketing online through printed advertising or person to person, the first thing that comes out of your mouth, the hook, needs to capture their attention. It's marketing 101. People's attention spans are short. There's no lack of information being thrown at people every moment, every day. The ability to grab attention is key. So this might be hard for those of you who know me personally to believe, but I used to be very shy. I had a hard time communicating with people and I struggled with self-confidence. But thanks to Gary, I was able to overcome my shyness. Today, I'm a total extrovert. My wife and I have 4 kids, and we were full-time RVers for the past 5 years. We spent time traveling around to different places while homeschooling our kids. One thing that we really worked hard on with our kids is being confident in themselves. We want them to be able to hold their own in a conversation with anyone. Kids, even adults today, can struggle to communicate with other people face to face. We're so quick to throw our thoughts, ideas, and opinion online, but when we get in front of others, we have a harder time communicating. As an entrepreneur, it's important to be able to confidently present yourself as you're talking about your business. Maybe you didn't have a chance to learn this when you're younger. That's okay. It's not too late to learn it now. Tell an engaging story. So once you have people's attention from your hook, you need to build a connection with them. For that, you're going to need engagement or a funny story. One of the things my stepdad used to sell was homemade bread. He actually had his own recipes. I don't remember every recipe, but I do recall he made a cinnamon raisin bread and something that he called Bible bread. And he'd get everyone's attention. He'd launch into a beautiful word story about how the breads came through this magical place called Whiffle Village. And Whiffle Village was inhabited by little Smurf creatures who lived in mushrooms. And every day these villagers would all go out, gather the finest ingredients, bring them back to the local village where they made all their specialty breads. And it worked like a charm. His story captivated the children and adults of all ages. All of them wanted to be one of the lucky ones to take home a loaf of the bread from Whiffle Village. Gary could gather a crowd and tell the story all about the village. Create an irresistible offer. When people were fully invested in the story, Gary made his offer. He always had great offers, but 1 for 3 or 2 for 5, buy one, get one free were the usuals. He never just straight up sold the product per piece at a flat rate. He always had an irresistible offer people couldn't turn down. Gary passed away a few years ago, and I never got to sit down and ask him where he learned his sales and marketing skills. As I think about all the time we spent together, I think a lot of it stemmed from his gift of evangelism. As a kid, I didn't really see it, but when I came to the Lord in 2003, he and I shared lots of times and started talking about the Lord together. I learned a lot about his deep faith in the Lord. He just couldn't keep the gospel to himself. He told me a story once about a kid who approached him on the street and demanded all his money. Gary not only talked the kid out of robbing him, he was able to minister to that boy and lead him to the Lord right there on the streets. That's sales, right? Gary presented that boy with the ultimate offer, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that boy accepted. It's so cool to look back and think about those stories as I share them. I see the goodness of God and how he's always working and moving. Let people sample your offer. Try before you buy is such a great marketing angle, and it's one that Gary used well. For example, he always had samples of the different kinds of bread that he sold. He'd cut a loaf into slices, spread the butter on. Oh man, he would lather that butter on. Come to think of it, the butter may have played a bigger role in how much he sold than the actual recipe did. He also sold nuts. One of his favorite attention grabbers is when he sold the nuts was, "Come try my nuts. They're the saltiest in town." The old ladies giggled so hard at that one, and he always made sure to have samples that they could try. It's much harder for someone to walk away when they've seen or tasted the proof of the concept. Psalms 34:8 says, taste and see that the Lord is good. I think that applies to marketing too. Have you ever noticed how many free trials are out there? Once somebody has tried something, in their minds, they've already taken ownership of it. They want to take it home with them. Gary understood that, and that's part of the reasons that he did sell so well. Find a Gary. I hope you had a Gary in your life. I'm realizing how much impact he had on me, both on the person I have become and on the marketer that I am today. If not for Gary, I don't think I would ever have the foundation under me to dive into the credit repair business I started, or go wheels up on my RV rental business, or my many other ventures. If you don't have someone you can look to for marketing and life advice, I highly encourage you, start looking. Having a mentor in life is game changing. Entrepreneurialism is challenging, and it can be a lonely journey. You do not have to go it alone. Chapter 3, Faith Over Fear. We watched the monitor in awe as the technician moved the wand across my wife's abdomen. My wife was pregnant with our third child, a boy. We decided to name him Noah. Although this wasn't our first ultrasound, it never got old getting a sneak peek at our babies before they were born. Everything looks good, the technician said. I squeezed Tina's hand as she smiled and looked up at me. Then suddenly, the ultrasound technician froze. She looked over us with a funny look on her face and then said, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the doctor. She quickly left the room, and my wife and I were left alone in silence with only the company of the ultrasound machine and fear. Thankfully, it wasn't long before the doctor joined us and told us something no parent wants to hear. One of your baby's kidneys isn't developing like the other one, he said. He went on to explain what this might mean in the different scenarios we might be looking at if the kidney continued to not develop. We both took it hard, but my wife especially was very distraught. She spent most of the ride home in tears. Ultimately, we knew that it was out of our hands. What could we do? The only thing we could do was pray, so we did. And while we were praying, God brought a very specific memory to her mind. Before Tina was pregnant, she heard God speak to her saying, Noah will be okay. At the time, she didn't know what it meant. But as we prayed on our drive home that day, God brought that word back to her. Garr, she said, God just reminded me that Noah will be okay. He told me, remember that? Remember when I said, I feel like God is saying the strangest thing to me? It was weeks ago, but I know it was God saying that he was going to be fine. Now I know this might seem strange to you. It's not every day you get a word from God, but whether it's from something you read in the Bible or something God speaks to your heart, it's just as powerful. Tina felt an immediate sense of peace and surety. Together, we decided we're going to cling to faith instead of fall to fear. At our next appointment, we had the same ultrasound technician. When we walked into the exam room, she looked at my wife in surprise. Wow, Tina, you look a little different from the last time. How are you doing? You know what, my wife replied? I'm on my rock. I'm choosing faith over fear. She shared what God shown her in the last ultrasound appointment, and the technician was amazed. Even though the results of the ultrasound hadn't changed, neither did our attitude of faith over fear. Every ultrasound right up until the day of Noah's birth still showed an underdeveloped kidney, but not to us. That didn't matter. We knew we had been given a word from the Lord, and we stood firm on it. As we walked out the rest of my wife's pregnancy in faith, and the ultrasound tech and the doctor were able to witness it all, the peace of God truly did surpass all understanding. Faith over fear. Faith over fear can be described in many ways. God over Satan, flesh over spirit, security over doubt. No matter how you refer to it, you deal with faith over fear every single day, even if you don't realize it. It doesn't matter who you are, an entrepreneur, an employee, a parent, a spouse, a friend. It doesn't matter what issues you're facing. your finances, your business, your physical, mental, or spiritual health. The choice between faith over fear is an every moment, everyday battle. And it really boils down to one question: which voice is the driving factor in your life? Either faith or fear will be stronger. The stronger voice will make the final decision as to whether you move forward in faith or move backwards in fear. Moving forward or backward. The concept of moving forward or backward comes from a message I heard a pastor give years ago. He said, everyone is either moving forward or moving backward. No one is ever really standing still. The Bible says that in the spiritual realm, the kingdom of God is forcefully advancing. It's always moving forward. It's the same in the natural realm we live in. Time is always moving forward, second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour. We're always moving from one day to one more week, one more year, closer to our final breath. There's really no standing still in life. We're either moving forward or we're moving backward, operating in faith or in fear. If you stopped and took a couple minutes to consider your life, you could think of many, many situations in your life where you operated in faith or you operated in fear. In fact, why don't you take a couple minutes to come up with some situations right now? As you do, think about the consequences or outcomes you experienced due to operating in faith or operating in fear. What did you learn? Winning or learning? There's a saying I love as an entrepreneur that there's no such thing as losing. You're either winning or you're learning. Life either happens to you or for you, and it's up to you on which perspective you decide to take. Entrepreneurs are either winning or learning. Does that mean you'll always make the right decision? No, there's no way to predict what will happen from one way to the next. And sometimes things are just out of our control, but that doesn't mean it's a loss. As long as you can take something from the situation and learn from it, you're winning. The lesson you've learned will prepare you for the next challenge, and you'll be stronger and wiser than you were the day before. Miracle baby. Noah was born by C-section, just like our other children. And as the doctors delivered him and rushed him around doing the things that doctors do with a brand new baby, I realized that none of them were talking about his kidney. When my wife finally asked, what about his kidney? The doctor looked up in surprise because they had forgotten all about it. We can't explain it, Mr. and Mrs. Russell, but your son's kidney is just fine. It was only by the grace of God we were able to walk in faith over fear in that situation. I'll be honest, there were times when we felt fear. There were times when we felt anxious, but over and over and over again, we chose to focus on faith. God brought us through. How cool is that? 5 ways to live in faith over fear. What does living in faith over fear look like in a practical sense? And is there anything you can do to help build that up in your life? Well, absolutely. The rest of this chapter is entirely devoted to the 5 things you can do in your life to live in faith over fear. First, keep sharing to a minimum. If you're facing an uncertainty or difficult circumstances, one of the best things you can do to guard your heart and mind is being careful who you share things with. We didn't tell very many people about the word God gave us about our son's condition. We knew that the more people we let in, the more voices and opinions we were going to get. And the more voices and opinions, the harder it was going to be able to stay focused. Choose your inner circle, your most trusted advisors and loved ones, very carefully. Not everyone will understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur or deal with the challenges you deal with. Protect your faith over fear attitude by surrounding yourself with good mentors who will lift you up. Second, remember there's no testimony without a test. When difficult situations arise, it's so tempting to pray that God would just remove them. We often pray that God will remove them, but we're never guaranteed a life. We were never guaranteed a life free from struggle. God doesn't allow difficult situations because he's tempting us, but he does allow us to go through tests to strengthen us. Walk through those tests in life strengthens our faith. It grows our trust in the Lord, and it teaches us how to practice setting aside fear, doubt, and worry. When we come out on the other side of the test, we now have a testimony that can be shared to encourage others. Third, cling to the scripture. Just telling yourself not to worry or be afraid doesn't automatically make it easy to live faith over fear. You have to replace the fear and worry with something else. Otherwise, you have nothing else to focus on, and your brain will automatically default back into fear. Find some Bible verses that you can focus on when you're tempted to fear. Write them down on your mirror, carry them on cards in your purse or your wallet, put them on a sticky note in your car. Surround yourself with the truth from God's word. Fourth, look for the peace of God. Sometimes the challenges we face are related to uncertainty surrounding tough decisions we need to make. Our entire family is affected by the choices we make, and that can feel heavy. What if we choose the wrong path? I see this a lot when I talk to people who are applying to become franchisees for Fireside RV. Many of them question whether or not being nervous about this, taking such a big step, is an indicator that they shouldn't do it. I always give them this one piece of advice: look for the peace of God. Colossians 3:15 says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. You may not have all the answers right now. You may feel a bit fearful, but if you have the peace of God about it, you can move forward in faith, knowing that He is with you. Finally, practice gratitude. There have been different times in my life where faith was up and down, back and forth, left and right. It felt like I was either living on the edge of a miracle or on the edge of a disaster, when I found myself focusing too much on what I didn't have or hadn't accomplished instead of what I could be thankful for. Entrepreneurs often live in the gap instead of the gain. We obsess over what we didn't accomplish and forget to acknowledge what we did. If we have a checklist of 10 things we want to get done in a day, but we only complete 3, we beat ourselves up over the 7 left undone. What would happen if we celebrated the 3 things that we did instead? What if we were excited and thankful for the positives at the end of the day? An attitude of gratitude changes the way that we go in tomorrow, and we actually bring more leverage and momentum into the next day. Acting in faith. It's one thing to say you have faith over fear, but what happens when you have to take a step of faith and actually live it out? When the doctors told us our son had a kidney problem, we couldn't do anything to change the situation. All we could do was pray. But there have been other situations in our life where God called us to take action without knowing what the outcome would be. Twice in our lives, we have been practically homeless. Once, years ago, we had 2 small children. We were living in a 1-bedroom at my sister's house. And once more recently, we finished our 5-year stint as full-time RVers. I lost everything in 2007. My wife and I went bankrupt and spent some time living in a bedroom at my sister's house. We finally had gotten an apartment, but when the lease was up, my wife wanted to find a house. We had 2 small kids. My wife had her heart set on getting a house, but the problem was because our bankruptcy, we didn't qualify for a mortgage yet. No loan, no house. Except that's when our faith showed up. We believe if God wanted us to have a house, He would make it possible. But we didn't just sit back and wait for a miracle. We started calling people and telling them what we believed God was going to provide a way for us to get a house. Some people thought we were crazy. Others thought it was cool and said they were going to pray for us. As I called friend after friend, God ministered to and encouraged me in my faith. I believed He used it to challenge other people in their faith too. Then some friends of ours from church invited us over for dinner. While we were there, we shared how we believed God was going to make it possible for us to get a house. As we talked, the husband and the wife walked into the other room and came back with his checkbook. He wrote us a check for $50,000 and told us to pay him back when we could. Years later, something similar happened. COVID was finally on its way out. We were ready to park the RV and start living in a house again. We found a house that my wife absolutely fell in love with and started the loan proceedings. Then things came to a screeching halt during the financing stage. However, we were almost all the way through the loan proceedings when we were told we couldn't get approved for the financing due to our losses of our rental business during some losses that we had sustained during COVID. I tried everything I could to make it work. I honestly fell into a deep depression. What kind of man was I that I couldn't provide a home for my family? I was just about to give up when my wife came to me one evening in tears. Honey, she said, you have done it all. You fought hard. You tried everything. I am just so proud of you. Thank you so much for trying to get us into this house. There she stood, devastated that the house of her dreams seemed out of reach. But instead of lashing out, she was thanking me. That did it. In that moment, my faith rose up. I didn't know how, but I was going to find a way to get that house, even if we had to buy it in cash. We had some cash on hand, but we were still several $100,000 short. Once again, I began calling everyone I knew, telling them about what we were believing God was going to do. It wasn't going to be, it wasn't easy being open, vulnerable, and raw with people, but I knew was God, what God was calling me to do. So I did it. And you know what? When I took that step of faith, God met me there and took us the rest of the way. Today, as I write this chapter, I'm writing it from inside our house. Share your testimony. The Bible says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. God loves seeing faith acted out so much that his word is full of verses, stories, and testimonies of what faith can do. The faith that rose up inside of me when we faced my son's health scare before he was even born was faith God gave me from reading his word. Through his word, his faith grows inside of us. That's how cool our God is. We all have testimonies, God's stories can use to help encourage others in our life of faith over fear. A lot of times we don't share those testimonies because we think we need all polished, prim, and proper. That's a lie. Testimonies are meant for sharing. When we share our testimonies, it makes a difference. It's true that testimonies often aren't that pretty. Sharing my testimony about how God brought me out of a deep depression I went through last year, or me drinking every single day during COVID and walking through life like a zombie for months during COVID, are not pretty. But God can use it to wake other people up, encourage them, help them shift the path they're on right now and choose faith over fear. If that's you, if you feel like you're stuck and walking through life on autopilot, I say to you right now in Jesus' name, wake up. Your spouse needs you. Your kids need you. Your employees need you. The marketplace needs you. Entrepreneurs drive our economy, and they are part of advancing the kingdom. How? King Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 10:19, money answers all things. Money makes it possible to share the gospel all over the world, feed the hungry, house the homeless, and fund millions of other hands and feet opportunities that show the love of God to others. Jesus is the real solution to problems, and our world needs more of him. Don't quit now. And if you do, you'll only end up right back where you began, wishing desperately that you could be where you are today. Help my unbelief. Remember, faith over fear doesn't mean you don't experience a fear. There's a story in Mark 29:23-25 about a man who approached Jesus to ask for the healing of his son, who was demon possessed. This man had gone to Jesus' disciples and asked them to cast out the demon, but they couldn't. By the time he got Jesus to ask, he was afraid and doubtful. If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus said to him, if you can, all things are possible for him who believes. Immediately, the father of the child cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. It's okay to have faith and fear at the same time, as long as you would choose to allow your faith to supersede your fear. 1 John 4:18 says, perfect love casts out all fear. What is perfect love? Jesus. Jesus is our perfect love. Only when we put our eyes on Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, are we able to operate in faith over fear. Chapter 4, anniversary gift gone wrong. I couldn't wait to see the look on my wife's face when she saw the gift I'd gotten her for her 10-year wedding anniversary. I should have had a bruise. That's how hard I was patting myself on the back about it. I mean, this was epic gift. Husband of the year, here I come. But the reaction I got was not the reaction I was hoping for. I had bought my wife a brand new, beautiful bunkhouse travel trailer and took her camping on it in the height of a windy, sandy, and hot Michigan summer while she was 9 months pregnant with our baby number 4. Needless to say, she was miserable. I, however, thought everything was fine right up until she walked up to me as I hung out around the campsite and said, "All right, I'm headed home." "What do you mean I'm headed home?" I was shocked. I thought she would be thrilled. I tried appealing to her sense of practicality. "Babe, we just got here and we've been camping and it took an hour. The site's reserved for a week." I watched the taillights of her car got smaller and smaller as she drove out of the campground on her way back to the soft bed and comforts of our home. I realized I needed a plan B. With a new baby on the way, obviously we weren't going to be using this travel trailer much anytime soon, but that didn't mean I couldn't benefit from my not so great gift purchase going wrong somehow. My entrepreneurial mind started spinning. Within a couple hours, I was online searching how to list an RV for rent, and the rest is history. My journey into real estate began at that moment. Today, I own Fireside RV Rental, the nation's largest RV rental company in the United States, with franchises in more than 20 locations. At writing this book, 35 locations now with me narrating it. And to think it all started when I took a problem, took a pain, and I turned it into an opportunity, into purpose. From problem to opportunity, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. It's been one thing after the next that led me to where I am today. Many of you maybe you can relate. Have you noticed that the best opportunities come from trying to find a better solution to a problem? For example, the world has become quite peer-to-peer sharing system, and it's all due to the entrepreneurial people who saw gaps in the market for lodging, vehicles, venues, basically any item a person might need, especially when traveling, always find a way to fill them, to share them. Want to rent your car or make some extra cash? There's Turo for that. Got a swimming pool that doesn't get much use? Rent it out through a website called Swimly. There's a website where you can list your garage, your yard, your storage space, even your stroller or playpen you can rent. Renting out your RV wasn't the first time I had taken a problem and seen it as an opportunity. I'd actually done this before several times. That's how many of my ventures began. But I have to say that giving my life to Christ in 2003 was the event that triggered the start of my entrepreneurial journey as an adult. Getting fired for sharing my faith. Getting fired for my faith. About 20 years ago, I got fired from my job. I had just become a Christian, and my life really changed in a way that was obvious to everyone I came in contact with. A radical transformation had taken place, and I had become one of the best employees that the company had. I started getting promotions, job title changes, and raises, and I ended up managing a crew of about 15 guys. Everything was going great. Then one day I got called into the front office because I was sharing Bible verses with some of the kids that worked with me after school. One of the teenagers had taken a scripture home on a piece of paper. He was going to study it so we could talk about it the next day. His mom found it, and she was not happy that he was being questioned about his faith. She went straight to her brother to complain about it. The problem was her brother happened to be the vice president of the company that I worked for. From that day on, the VP had it out for me. He looked for any opportunity he could to get rid of me, but really didn't have one. Because of my newfound faith, I was one of the best employees that they had. I really worked hard to honor them and to do my best at work, but in his eyes, it wasn't enough. He even used an accident that I was involved in to try and file a workers' comp claim against me, saying I wasn't fit to do my job. The case agent handling the claim called him to the carpet and said, "Hey, we see what you're trying to do something here for whatever reason, but if you let him go, there's going to be a big lawsuit on your hands." He realized that he couldn't let me go, and that situation stalled for a while. Then one day I was sitting at my desk and I felt the Lord whisper to me that I was going to get fired that very day. I walked into the office of one of my other bosses, whom I was good friends with, and I said, "Hey, guess what? God told me I'm going to get fired today." Because of where he was at in his faith walk, he didn't have those kind of conversations with the Lord or think that the Lord communicated directly with his kiddos. He thought the Lord communicated more through priests and stuff like that. "Oh, there you go again with your crazy stories," he said. It always freaked him out when I would share with him the stuff the Lord was telling me, and he didn't believe me. But you know what? Within the next hour or so, I heard my name called over the company loudspeaker. Garr to the front, Garr Russell to the front. I knew without a doubt what was going to happen. I was called into the HR office, handed a stack of papers that outlined a severance package, and told they were eliminating my position, effective immediately. I signed the package, accepted the severance check, and left the shop, excited because I had just been persecuted for my faith. I realized it was time to step into the entrepreneurial. I realized it was time to step into entrepreneurship for real. My first business, being fired, forced me to consider what I really wanted to do with my life. And it led me back to something I had done years ago during the off season of my job. When I was younger, man, I had made a bunch of mistakes and choices that led to a bad credit score. When I gave my life to the Lord, I wanted to repair my credit and make a fresh start with my finances. I had plenty of time to work on it when I was laid off during the winter. I started going to the library, doing tons of research on credit repair. I gathered all the tools and figured out how to negotiate with collectors, dispute accounts on my credit reports, and build positive credit. It was so effective that I was able to purchase a house, and it forever changed our lives, changed my life. That experience immediately came to mind when several nights after getting fired, I ran into a guy at a Bible study who had a credit counseling company, and I was looking for a partner. I had done it before. Why not try my hand at it again? The opportunity was too good to pass up. I decided I would check it out. So I went to work for him for a couple of days. I loved it. I ended up partnering with him, but it wasn't the business experience I was hoping for. There were certain things that were going on inside the business that I really didn't believe were right. Although I hated to start all over again, I knew I couldn't stay in this partnership. I walked into the office one morning and asked to be released from my non-compete agreement so I could start my own credit repair business. Amazingly, he agreed. He even gave me a computer, wished me luck, and sent me on my way. I ran that credit counseling company for over a decade, published 2 books on credit, and won several awards. Eventually, I sold that when I went to full time into the RV rental space, following the nudges. It's so cool looking back at how when you simply follow the little nudges you get from God, you never know where they'll lead you. As you read this book, I urge you to reflect on your own journey. Think about where you've been, where you are now, and where you're going. See if you can identify little God nudges you felt along the way, and be open to looking for more nudges in the future. I'd encourage you, the best is still ahead of you. God can and will use these things in life you thought were negative experiences and problems and turn them into opportunities. Think about that. How does that change the way you see the challenges and potholes you've come against? What's next for you? Is God using this book to call you into your own entrepreneurial journey? Or maybe you're in the entrepreneurial journey already. Is God calling you to rise up in your faith and take it a step further by hiring your first employee so you can continue to scale your business? Maybe you need to let go of a certain set of responsibilities that you feel no one else can handle, but you and systems and processes in place to free you up to live more of the lifestyle you want to live. That's what I've done, and it's so freeing. My family and I are currently just wrapping up our 5-year full-time RV experience. We traveled the country and have been so blessed to homeschool our kids ever since the start of our homeschooling journey. I'm with them every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday during their homeschool curriculum. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Chapter 5, Meet Mr. Kim. Once I had successfully launched and systematized my first RV rental location, I started thinking about expanding. I figured I couldn't be the only one out there interested in the RV rental management model. And I started considering ways I could expand my business without spreading myself too thin. I was enjoying the full-time RV lifestyle though, and I didn't want it to become chained to a location. But if I could find other people who were interested in doing what I was doing, and then I could teach them how, I started talking to people about what I was doing on social media. Honestly, my business was built mainly through social media, almost exclusively through Facebook. I was a member of several Facebook groups full of entrepreneurial minded people. And you know how it is, get entrepreneurs together and we talk about business ideas. And that's how the idea of creating a franchise started for me. I looked for peer to peer Facebook groups for people interested in the RV rental management and started posting like outdoorsy and RV share Facebook groups. When people express interest, we connect. That's how I met Mr. Kim Hill in June of 2017. Mr. Kim Hill saw one of my posts about RV management. We started chatting back and forth in Facebook Messenger. He was interested in what I was doing, so I started mentoring him. I created a business in a box, and he opened a location in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. My business had its first branch, and that was just the beginning. Business in a box. I had the idea to create a business in a box model 10 years ago before I ever got into RVs. I was in the credit counseling industry, and part of it was a coaching program for credit counseling business owners. This coach that I had been mentored by had the software and systems and coaching and conferences. All of us credit counseling companies would come together and under this guide be coached and mentored. Together we learned, network, and sharpened our skills. It was great. Fast forward to my RV rental journey. Now that I had people approaching me about learning how to do what I was doing, I thought back to that business in a box model I had learned under learned under my credit counseling coach. I realized I could do something like that, offer training and resources and support and networking for people who did not want to start their own, for people who want to start their own business renting out RVs. Today, how I can see that seed was planted in me a decade ago become something God used to help people start their own business. It's amazing how we learn and grow and evolve. We pull and pluck from past experiences and we use them for current and future ventures. That's what I did with my business in a box model for RV rental business owners. I started teaching other people like Mr. Kim how they could start their own RV rental business. One conversation led to the next, one step led to the next, and that's when I started considering starting a franchise, becoming a franchise. Getting set up as a franchise takes about a year, and it's a massive undertaking. It involves the Federal Trade Commission, creating a several hundred-page document called a franchise disclosure document, and attorneys, accountants, and registration. Depending on the state that you're going to be operating in, there's quite an onslaught of paperwork to file. When I started out with just the business in a box, my business was named Michigan Camper Rental. As we expanded to other states, we changed the name to the Camper Connection. Camper Connection could not be trademarked, so when we franchised, we rebranded one final time to Fireside RV Rental. It definitely didn't happen overnight, but today's Fireside RV Rental is a franchise with locations in over a dozen states with hundreds of RVs that we manage. It's crazy how just taking a step of faith, taking a step of action leads to the next step and the next step. When you invite momentum and excitement into the equation, you never know where a simple idea will lead you. One small step. Where could your next step lead you? Is there a simple idea that seems to kind of pop up repeatedly, whether it's yearly, weekly, monthly? I've had several business ideas throughout the years that just never seem to go away. They always circle back, and when I'm doing research, there they are again. The need and opportunity are still there. Whether you have a business idea or you're just tired of being an employee and not being able to set your own schedule or determine your own future and family time, what's one small step that you could take towards someday becoming your own boss? Step by step, you can walk towards someday firing your employer and taking the exciting journey into entrepreneurialism. Millions before You have done it and succeeded, and you too can make it happen. Pay it forward. When you think about where you were a year, 5 years, 10 years ago, think about how there's someone else out there who would love to know what you know. Where you are today may have seemed impossible to you back then, but here you are. What you know can help someone else take their next step. Thinking about the progress you've made in the past few years, then write it down. Then write down your answer to the following questions. What lessons have I learned? What struggles have I gone through? What skills and tools have I acquired? Thinking about how you have learned and experienced experience can be used to help someone else, to encourage someone else who is a year, 5 or 10 years behind you. No matter where you are at in your journey, there's always someone else who would love to be where you are at today. Start looking for those people and asking yourself, who could use some encouragement from you? What are a couple small things you could do immediately to start encouraging somebody who is several steps behind you? Small steps count. Whether it's writing a blog post or once a month, or creating some Facebook videos with simple steps and strategies and sharing life lessons you've learned, you have value to give. Remember, you could be the mentor or friend that someone has been waiting for. Chapter 6, COVID and my comeback. I recently did a Google search on the COVID timeline. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention website popped up at the top. The first article on the site mentioned COVID was dated December 12, 2019, and stated, a cluster of patients in the China province in the city of Wuhan began to experience symptoms of a typical pneumonia-like illness that does not respond well to standard treatments. On January 5th, 2020, the CDC began investigating the virus, and by January 28th, we are under a level 3 health notice. Travel, education, commerce, and social activities around the world went into lockdown for long stretches of time, and the pandemic stretched through mid-2022. COVID and my business. My family and I were full-time RVers when COVID started. We were staying at a KOA campground in Okeechobee, Florida, when we started hearing little bits and pieces of the news. We knew other states were starting to put some mandates and restrictions into place as far as business and travel, but in Florida, things were pretty open. There were a few times all the restaurants closed up for a handful of weeks, but then everything would open back up again. To be honest, COVID really wasn't on my radar much until one day while scrolling through Facebook and came across an interesting article. The article was titled, Top Things CEOs Wish They Would Have Done During the Collapse of 2008, as written by and was shared by Jeff Cavins, the founder of Outdoorsy. It got my attention because it was in 2008 that I had gotten fired from my job for sharing my faith. We basically lost everything and we had to file for bankruptcy. I never wanted to live through anything like that again. I recognized I needed to sit up and take notice of how the pandemic might affect my business so I could be prepared. As I read the article, I could see some parallels between what happened in the crash of 2008 and what was happening in 2020. The article talked about how CEOs put off making important decisions about their businesses because they assumed things would rebound quickly. Weeks passed, then months. The country fell into a long span of economic turndown that had detrimental effects for millions. The rest of the article went on to describe the things that CEOs wish they would taken action on sooner that would have helped them avoid more hardship. One of the main actions CEOs said they wish they would have made was to lay off staff sooner. As I read the article and thought about how business shutdowns could affect our economy, I decided I needed to act. First, I laid off all my office staff for our RV rental company, which at the time was called the Camper Connection. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time to protect my business and stay afloat. But then something really unexpected happened, an unexpected blessing. Within a couple of weeks of laying off my staff, I got a huge contract with a power company in Michigan. They needed mobile quarantine units for all their electrical engineers. They ordered 75 RVs and requested they be placed at power plants all around Michigan. On one hand, I was thrilled. What a blessing. especially right now. On the other hand, had no idea how I was going to handle the project without my team. Once this is all facilitated and launched, then what? Do I bring my staff back on to help them facilitate this when potentially I might have to lay them back off in a couple of weeks, forcing them to potentially lose out on the COVID relief benefits? I decided to go ahead and facilitate the contract without my team. I used all of our available fleet in the area and outsourcing the logistics to others, and I pulled it off. It was during this time that the state of Michigan was completely shut down. I was able to take the profits from the power company contract and purchase two rental properties with cash. Due to some connections I had in the real estate industry, I got some solid information on these two properties. Showings were not allowed and they could not do inspections. I took full advantage of the current economic conditions of the time, and I made some really good lowball offers. Have you ever heard people talking about how an abundance of wealth is created during times of chaos when people are all operating in fear? Those who are willing to step outside outside the fear can make some big moves in business and grow. That's what I had done. I was ready to keep making moves so I could spend more time working on my business instead of working in them. Reality sinks in. It was one thing after another after that. Next, we landed a contract with the National Football League for mobile quarantine units. Business was booming, but things on the other side of the coin, things weren't going so great. By this time, my family and I had left Florida and returned to Michigan for the summer. Whereas Florida had been relatively open, Michigan was very, very locked down. I tried to go around and check on my rental properties, but the tenants were uncomfortable with me coming in because of COVID. That meant I could not go through all my units in a new 8-unit property I just previously bought in March. And it was like I entered a whole different world, and I wasn't handling it very well. Even going to the store to do something as simple as pick up some supplies from my rental properties had become a huge ordeal. Mask and temperature checks were required everywhere, and you had to wait in long lines just to get in the door. At one point, I showed up in Menards without a mask, and the store employees wouldn't let me in. I'm not proud of it, but I got frustrated and ended up in a verbal altercation with one of the employees. Slow fade. I didn't handle all the change very well. The band Casting Crowns has the song entitled Slow Fade, and that really sums up how I began using other things to fill in the void the lack of social interaction in the economy had created. I had always been an occasional social drinker, but during COVID, my wife and I started drinking more and more until it really became a daily part of our life. I turned to alcohol and sex as a way of escape. Drinking daily and wanting sex once or twice a day became my new normal. Without realizing it at first, I was feeding my flesh and I was falling into a deep depression. I became very negative and a lot of fear crept in. I started making poor decisions in business, including selling the West Michigan branch of my RV rental company to someone who wasn't prepared to handle it then, and then rebuying it in a snap decision. The West Michigan branch was our largest branch with around 15 units. I decided I was ready to sell it so I could spend more time working on my business instead of in my business. One of our Fireside RV community members expressed some interest, so I sold it to him. Unfortunately, he wasn't ready to become an entrepreneur. He really wasn't an entrepreneur. This put his family and him under a lot of stress, which put my office staff, my business partner, and me under a lot of stress. Finally, when the buyer's marriage was in tatters and his kids were falling apart, I made a quick emotion decision to buy the business back from him. And that's what I did. I bought the business branch I didn't really want. Then I closed the whole thing down, bringing hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue per year to a screeching halt. In hindsight, there's so many ways I could have handled that. I could have helped him sell the franchise, but I was in such a depression that I just want to get back to drinking and doing what I was doing. Aftershocks. It wasn't until COVID was pretty much over that I was able to get a straight perspective on the impact the pandemic had had on me. While I was in it, I was too close. I couldn't see the clear trajectory I was on and how it was affecting me. I thought it wasn't a big deal. I thought it didn't affect me. I was wrong. When the proverbial dust cleared, I discovered I wasn't on the right track. The problem was I wasn't sure how to recover. I'm a people person, an extrovert. not being able to interact with people or operate my business the way I wanted to had hit me hard, really harder than I realized. To mask it, I started drinking early in the day every day. So basically living as an alcoholic. I was not serving my family, my company, my community, or my church. From the outside, everything looked fine. I was still operating pretty normally. I wasn't putting my family in danger by drinking and driving or being abusive, but I was just feeding my flesh. I was living in a very selfishly and using alcohol and sex with my wife to numb the pain and boredom, and it didn't make me happy. I was several chapters into a book by John Eldredge called Resilient, about dealing with challenging times when the truth smacked me in the face. It was like being hit with aftershocks. The main disaster, COVID, was almost over, but I was still dealing with the fallout. I never forget sitting at a restaurant in Fort Pierce with my wife and completely breaking down. I realized I was depressed out of my mind and having suicidal thoughts on a regular basis. I wasn't sure where to turn. Resilient. I stumbled along for several more months until I realized I couldn't keep trying to get through this alone. I reached out to Josh Latimer, someone I had admired in the business world. I shared with him about what I had been going through. I told him I was ready to get back on track with my life and my business and I needed help. The problem was he was in Texas and I was in Florida. He invited me to fly out there and meet with him, even though I had been the one to reach out to him. I instantly got a little leery. I told myself he was just trying to get me out there to sell me one of his coaching programs or something. So I never took action on it. It was a good thing. It's a good thing God has a way of making things happen anyway. You see, Josh and I are both native Michiganders. So when my family and I went on our last road trip up to Michigan before permanently heading back down to Florida to settle down, I shouldn't have been surprised when we ran into each other. Every time my wife and I are back in Michigan, we visit a certain hotel in Ludington and stay there for a few days. We were at the hotel restaurant eating dinner, and sure enough, who walks in but Josh Latimer? Turns out he and his family were there visiting relatives who live in Ludington. We ended up having dinner together that night. He knew I wanted to get back on track with my entrepreneurial journey, so he invited me to Funnel Hacking Live, a digital marketing event held by a software company called ClickFunnels in September in Orlando. I hadn't heard of ClickFunnels and I had no clue what it was about, but I immediately registered. Little did I know the event was going to change my world. Beginning of a comeback. When I arrived at Funnel Hacking Live, I had no clue what I was attending. I thought I was going to a marketing event. Turns out it was a everything event, emotional, spiritual, professional, and it rocked me. God used Funnel Hacking Live to wake me up and begin my COVID comeback journey. On the first night, ClickFunnels founder Russell Brunson talked about faith over fear. It made such an impact on me that I went back to my hotel room that night in tears. I got on my knees and I cried out before the Lord, repenting for my selfishness and the way I'd been living. I posted a live video that night in the ClickFunnels community sharing my story because I knew I had just hit a turning point. It was time to change. I signed up for the 2 Club X coaching program during that event, and it gave me a community of entrepreneurs and set me on a course to grow my business. Faith over fear became a theme of my life from that moment on. I'm sure you can tell because of one of the chapters in this book is called Faith Over Fear. I believe this life doesn't just happen to us, it happens for us. And if you're willing, we can use the challenges and struggles we experience to strengthen us. Today, I'm stronger than ever in my faith, in my business, my purpose, and my calling. Instead of sitting in selfishness and sin, I sit here in my office and I look around. I'm surrounded by Post-its that talk about my purpose. Plus, as of March 17th, 2023, alcohol is no longer a part of my life. To hold myself accountable, I posted alcohol adds 0 value to my life on my Facebook account and haven't taken a drink since. Your COVID journey. Everyone has their own COVID story. It affected some more than others, and many entrepreneurs out there weren't as lucky as me. Some lost their businesses, homes, or marriages, and the suicide and divorce rates skyrocketed during the pandemic. Please take a moment and ask the Lord, God, where am I at in my COVID journey? Is there a piece of my heart or mind or spirit that needs healing? Is there a relationship that's been damaged that needs to be restored? Maybe the pandemic and the recession have turned everything in your life upside down. Maybe you and your business are still reeling from the after effects. Or maybe you're now safely on the other side, but you're still trying to come to terms with how to process the lessons you know you should be learning from it. Nobody said going wheels up again will be easy. It's hard to set aside the fear, pain, and loss and step back into your entrepreneurial giftings when you've experienced setbacks and challenges. But even if you're still in the middle of the mess, that doesn't mean your entrepreneurial journey is over. Sharing my COVID comeback story is part of my mission. God was faithful to walk me through every step of my journey from depression and alcoholism. Because of him, I'm back to being wheels up in my marriage, my family, and my business again. And if he did it for me, he can do it for you too. As you read this story, God is speaking to you right now. He wants to bring you to a new level of freedom. He wants to mend a relationship in your life. He wants to encourage you to take a step into what's next in your entrepreneurial journey. Yet, even if you feel like everything in your life is good, I want to encourage you. Look around for others who may still be struggling. There are still a lot of people who haven't reintegrated into society yet. There are a lot of people who are still stuck in a negative mindset. There are still a lot of people who haven't returned to church, haven't plugged back into their families, haven't gotten back onto track in their businesses. Maybe God wants to use you to help them. Chapter 7, Challenges and Failures. Some challenges are thrust upon us, others we choose. Whether we decide willingly to enter a challenge or we voluntarily are dropped into one of the circumstances out of our control. Challenges can be as positive or negative as we allow them to be. They can push us forward or they can help us dive deeper. Navigating involuntary challenges. During COVID, I went through a period of depression. I made bad choices. I drank every day and lived selfishly. The pandemic wasn't a challenge I voluntarily chose to experience. No one did. You can't control a pandemic. One thing led to the next day, to the day after that. And sometimes it feels like I was fighting just to make it to the other side. Once I made it to the other side, though, I could see what God had done and what he had created out of that challenge. There is much more excitement and passion in me, in my marriage, and in my calling to inspire Christian entrepreneurs. If you've just come through a challenge you didn't choose, you can still benefit from it. You may have not been purposeful about the way you live through it, but you can be purposeful about what you take away from it. Take a few moments to sit down today and reflect on a challenge that you've lived through. Or maybe you're still in the midst of one right now. It can be anything. Maybe you're in a challenge with your business and you have a fear of failure or letting your family down. Maybe you feel tension and conflict between you and your team. Whatever the case, good can come of it if you approach it from the right perspective. Ask yourself the following questions and pay attention to your answers. You'll be amazed at what you discover about the ways challenges can change you and how your life can benefit from even the most unpleasant circumstances. Question number 1, what's causing the challenge? Sometimes an involuntary challenge is the result of a decision you made or a false belief or fear you refuse to let go of. Other times, something completely out of your control happens, like the pandemic, and it triggers internal and external challenges in your life. Question number 2, what am I learning from the challenge? Take some time to reflect on what you're learning. Take some hard emotional conversations or decisions that need to happen. I've been there. I've made a string of bad decisions during COVID. I've had to lay off some staff, recognize some things, and sell some real estate to bring myself financially back to where I needed to be for my family. It wasn't easy, but I definitely learned from it. You win or you learn. Many times when you go through a challenge, we let it stop us. Fear of failure or success makes us shrink back and refuse to take another step. We fear that if we fail, we'll let down our friends and family and ruin our business. Fear of failure is the ultimate reason why so many people don't move forward. The real truth is, life does not happen to us. Life happens for us. We can take challenges and we can learn from them. One of my phrases is saying that there is no failure. You're either winning or you are learning. What if we approached all of life like that? So a situation doesn't turn out the way you thought it would. If you've learned and grown from it, was it really a failure or was it a learning process? Did it help you become even greater and stronger? Or if you look at a lot of people who have accomplished amazing things in their lives, most of it was preceded by what we call failure. Like Thomas Edison, who failed over 1,000 times before he created the light bulb. Some of the most successful people in the world, like the Rockefellers and Gerald Ford, experienced their greatest success only after they had many, many failures. The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful isn't the unsuccessful didn't fail. It's that they took those failures and challenges and used them as learning opportunities. Then they applied and went on to achieve greater things. It isn't failure if we're learning. Learning is the great catalyst that launches us into success. It causes us to take the hero's journey to uncover the revelation we need to move past most of life's challenges. Allow what you experience during involuntary challenges to create inner transformation personally, intellectually, spiritually, mentally, and physically. When we've come through to the other side, we can return to our families, businesses, communities with the power and strength to encourage others to walk through the hero's journey. Intentional challenges. Challenges produce growth, which is necessary and even welcome. So what if we put ourselves in situations where we're challenged on purpose? What if we could trigger growth by choosing a challenge? There's a big movement happening right now in the marketing world with online challenges. All it takes is a few minutes on social media to run into an ad for a 5-day lead generation challenge or a 30-day weight loss challenge. People are actually creating challenges as a way to help other people get targeted results. So that got me thinking, what if I did the same thing for my kids? The mantra challenge. I have a mantra I say to myself every day that states my definiteness of purpose and chief aim in life. It made such a difference. I encouraged to help my kids create their own. I want it to be purposeful experience for them. So I created what we call the R Mantra Challenge. During the challenge, my kids each wrote their own mantras based on 4 bullet points. Bullet point 1, you have a creator and you were created for a purpose. This quote comes from Rick Warren's book, The Purpose Driven Life, where he writes, I was created on purpose for a purpose. I was created to know God and make him known. I was made for worship, discipleship, fellowship, ministry, and evangelism. We all share this overarching purpose, but we also have our individual purpose as well, which leads us to the second bullet point. You have specific giftings that reveal your unique purpose. We all have our own natural gifts and talents, but most of us don't take the time to sit down and think about them and understand what they are. I wanted my kids to be aware of what their gifts and talents, so then they and we as parents can purposefully cultivate them as they grow up. We had our kids make a list of their gifts and talents. They consider what they do loving, what they're good at, and what they feel passionate about. Bullet point number 3, you have a unique purpose, part of why God created you. Once we identified our kids' gifts and talents, we used those as clues to help uncover what their unique callings and purposes are. Of course, with kids, this is a work in progress, but as they grow, this will become more and more clear, especially as we take action to steer them in the right direction. God shows us hints to their purposes through prayer and observing their giftings and callings. Then we choose to put these opportunities into practice and grow these gifts and talents in front of our kids, which helps them with bullet point number 4. You have specific disciplines to achieve your purpose. This will require studying and sharpening your skills. What you nurture grows. We want our kids to think about the way they spent their time and activities they chose. By being aware of their unique talents and gifts, we can help them connect with ways to strengthen them. Mantras in action. Want to see an example of our kids' mantras? Here's 12-year-old Garrison's mantra, our 12-year-old Garrison. When you read through it, you'll be able to spot how the 4 bullet points work together to create the vision and direction. I was created on purpose for a purpose. I was created to know God and make him known. I was made for worship, fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and evangelism. I hear God's voice and he directs my path. I am a lover of the light and a truth teller. The emotions and actions of those do not determine mine. I do hard things to achieve my goals. I have God-given talents. I create checklist to achieve my goals. I dream, hope, and use my imagination. I am called to serve God and serve others by placing their needs above theirs. I am a young man of honor. I am noble, courageous, and brave. I will study nature, animals, survival, and hunting. I will learn about fatherhood and how the heart and the mind of man will work. Because we have been purposeful about seeking God and observing his natural gifts and talents, we know what our 12-year-old giftings are, and we know what his calling is. We believe Garrison will someday have his own ranch and guide services and use it to share God's love with dads and sons. Because, excuse me, because we know our son Garrison is a gifted outdoorsman, we can provide plenty of opportunities for him to get out and work in nature or on farms and ranches. We are doing things strategically to prepare him for his future. For example, he works at a ranch and is learning how to help with cattle. He went there last Saturday and worked all day. And oh man, he came back so charged and excited and energized and full of passion. He couldn't wait to share everything that he learned with us. How cool is that? That our 12-year-old is doing specific things to prepare him for the specific purpose that he has. Because he's walking in his giftings, it charges, energizes, and fuels him. We didn't have to negotiate or try to convince him to get up early to go on work on the ranch for that day. He was excited to do it. He had his clothes laid out and he was talking to us about it at bedtime and how excited he was about that the next day. Having a mantra also gives Garrison direction. He knows what skills and knowledge he needs to be feeding into himself in order to grow, so he's prepared to fulfill the plans and purposes God has for his life. Personalize your mantra. Garrison isn't the only one of our 4 kids who has benefited from having a mantra. They each have one based on the framework of the 4 bullet points, but they're personalized. For example, God has shown us Noah is going to be a mighty businessman. We can see in him already. He's the first one of the kids up every morning. He jumps right into his schoolwork many times without us even having to tell him. Noah says that he will make millions of dollars and give it away for God's glory and then do it again. Years ago, God showed me that Noah would be a mighty businessman, and I was blown away by all the great and amazing things he was going to accomplish. We want to help steer Noah in the right direction, so he uses his talents for God's glory. His mantra includes, I will learn to be wise like Solomon, study the human mind and sales, and look for solutions to problems. Emma, our 14-year-old, is going to be a missionary. She is called to be a mother to the motherless. She has already been on several mission trips, and we send her to YWAM every year. She serves in the nursery at church, and she's learning guitar so she can lead little kids in songs and worship. Emma's mantra says, I am called to be a mother to the motherless. I am called to be a missionary and will support my work by creating passive income. I will learn Spanish, the guitar, God's word, and how the human mind works to prepare me. We're actually helping Emma launch her first business right now, a blog that encourages Christian homeschool teenagers by offering mentoring and coaching services to them. Our sweet little Isabella, age 7, has a mantra too. God has shown her that she's gifted in prayer and compassion and has a strong prophetic voice. So we're teaching her to grow in prayer, prophecy, and worship. We're also teaching our 4 about the entrepreneurial lifestyle, because no matter what your calling and purpose are in life, you need money. Money is the common denominator for anything. Success leaves clues. People say success leaves clues. Most of the time, those clues are found in failures and challenges. So I want to encourage you, wherever you are at today, whether you're intentionally stepping into a challenge or in the midst of a challenge that's outside of your control, you have everything inside of you to succeed. Lean in by asking yourself, what's causing this challenge and what you're learning to take massive action on what you're learning. Lean in by asking yourself, what's causing the challenge and what you're learning. Then take massive action on what you're learning. As you take action, pay attention to what's working and what's not working. Then make adjustments and take some more action. All great success comes not from avoiding challenges, but from being in the challenges and learning through them. It's okay to feel afraid, but it's not okay to let that fear keep you from moving forward. Take your experiences and use them as data on where to tweak, where to change, where to pivot, where to shift, and where to move. You have what it takes inside of you. It's all available to you. The first step is just to choose to learn from challenges. Let challenges change you for the better, and you will find success. Chapter 8, take the first step. One morning at my son's football game, my wife and I walked by a guy wearing full camo sitting on the tailgate of his truck with his bass boat attached. He seemed like my kind of guy. I like not to walk by a person without at least smiling at them or saying hello. So I did what I typically do. I started a conversation. How's your day going? That simple greeting turned into a 40-minute conversation. It didn't take long for us to realize we had a lot in common. My wife came up and introduced herself too, and we realized our daughters are friends and plan a traveling volleyball league together. As always, talks soon turned to commonly asked questions. So what do you do? I shared with him about how we're in the RV, boat, and long and short-term rental property management business. This got him really excited. As I started talking about business and how we got started, I could tell he was interested. Oh man, that's awesome, he said. I've always wanted to do something like that. I wish I could do something like that. Hey, if you're discontent with where you're at, then do something, I encouraged him. Take a step, man. Take one step. It all starts with a step. If you have a desire and you're discontent with where you're currently at in life, take a step in the direction you'd like to go. Not sure which direction you'd like to go? Think back to the chapter on challenges and failures. Remember the mantras my kids and I have? We dug deep to uncover our talents and giftings. And those talents and giftings are clues to your calling. Do you know what your giftings and skill sets are? I bet you have some inkling. And I also bet there's something you've always wanted to do that's tied to it. Here's a quick exercise I do when I'm trying to drill down on something. Step 1, write down all your ideas on a piece of paper. Doesn't matter how big or small, realistic or far-fetched, just write them all down. Step 2, write yourself which one you feel most drawn to and passionate about. Cross off ideas one by one until you pinpoint that one idea. Step 3, take a step in that direction. That's it. That's the entrepreneurial journey, and that's how most businesses get started. The truth is, you don't have to have the end in mind when you start. Heck, I have buddies in business who have literally successful 7-figure businesses, and they still don't know what their end goal is. And you know what? That's okay for now. If you want to make a shift, step into entrepreneurship and start a business, the biggest thing you need to do is take a step forward. You have to make one decision. Make one decision, take one small step of action, then another and another. Don't let not being able to see the whole picture keep you from becoming an entrepreneur.